Today I am doing a book tag. I feel like it's been quite a while since I've had the time to do one. I saw Gina Stanier do this tag, and I enjoyed the questions, and then I was going to sit down and film my January wrap-up, but I'm like, oh shit, there's like 3 books that I haven't finished yet, and I've got another 2 or 3 days. Maybe after I film this I can buckle down and try and finish one more book in January. All of that to circle back to what I was starting to say and got very distracted from. This is the end of the year book tag by Kier the Scrivener, not to be confused with the end of the year book tag by Ariel Bissett. So that tag, you're supposed to do that one in September or October. You're supposed, like, that one is talking about your reading between now and the end of the year. This end of the year book tag is actually reflecting on the year of reading that you just finished. So it is 10 questions. So question number 1, how did you feel about this reading year? I feel good about it. I feel like I learned a lot about my tastes with different genres. A lot about like my motivation around reading and reading goals, in terms of like what goals feel like fun, or they feel rewarding, as opposed to what goals feel like work. So I chat about that a little bit. I think my video just went up about my reading goals. My goals, my guidelines for 2022. And in summary, a lot of it is just prompts to help me get through the books I already own so they don't just sit there for years. And also so I can make room to buy new books, which is a thing that I enjoy doing, but I don't want to feel overwhelmed by it. Anyway, so it was like the first full year when I was tracking my reading. So I learned a lot. So that's cool. Question number 2. What are 2 phases or authors that you went through this year? So really, I read so all over the place that really like the only kind of phase I went through was reading dark historical romance specifically. I blew through like 5 or 6 Elizabeth Hoyt books. I finished a trilogy series by Scarlett Peckham. Yeah, those 2 romance authors were just like, I found them and I was just like, give me all of it right now. Which I'm not usually like that. I'm usually more patient with when I get through something. Number 3, what is a book you regret not reading? The Warmth of Other Suns. Because this is borrowed from a friend of mine, and I think pretty soon here I will have had it in my possession for like a year. And part of the reason that I haven't, here's the thing, I'm not bummed that I haven't finished it, I'm bummed that I haven't started it, and the reason I haven't started it is my library doesn't have an audiobook, and just this giant brick of a nonfiction is so intimidating, because it's like, I am going to be able to read like 1 page and then I will fall asleep, because that's how my brain works with something that's not like action plot driven. But I don't know, maybe I'll find it really fascinating. I just need to start it. Question number 4, what is something you learned from your reading this year? I have learned to really moderate my expectations around literary horror. I have not made a list of most disappointing books of my year, just because like most of my reading was really good, and the only things that were disappointing were things that I didn't have the right expectations for them, and usually it was literary horror or literary speculative fiction, where I went in wanting what I realize that I struggle with in that genre is like science fiction or speculative fiction or horror, I want the story to be told via action. I want a plain action plot to inspire reflections on society. I don't want, 100 pages of moral philosophizing about reflecting on society. And that's not to say that like every literary horror or every literary speculative fiction is going to be very telling rather than showing. But I am like 3 for 3 with books that have done that, and I've gone in really excited and come out very tired. So I think I either just like need to read more reviews, or I need to pick my moment when I read them and really go in with an open mind. It's weird. It's like I either need to like hone my expectations more with reviews, or I need to abandon all expectations and go in with a completely open mind. Question number 5. What is a book you wish you talked about more? I'm pretty good at talking about the books that I really, I'm pretty good at talking about books that I feel like people need to be aware of, or I really love it, but it also seems really hyped and I don't want to talk it to death. But I've got 2 nonfiction that I feel like I would love to see people talk about more. The first is I Hope We Choose Love, a trans girl's notes from the end of the world. I talked about this in my favorite nonfiction of 2021. But this is just like an author that I need to read more of her stuff, and I found that her collection of essays and poetry to just be very interesting, and very just beautifully written. And also just like really stretched my brain around issues around trans women and like the trans queer community and just like the queer community in general. And then the other one is We Are the Weather, which actually Lena Norms just released a video about. It's in conjunction with Ariel Bissett. Oh wait, that's the person I mentioned about the other tag. What a weird small world. Okay. But she's doing a video series where she and Ariel are going to read a book about climate justice or climate change nonfiction, and then they're gonna discuss it. Basically, like, if you feel intimidated, don't worry, we'll read the books for you, and then you can just like come and watch this hour video where we talk about it. And I think from Lena's Instagram, one of the books they're going to be talking about in this video that just went up that I haven't watched yet, sorry, is We Are the Weather. And so this is a book that I think a lot of people talk about it being like one of those books that's like trying to convince you to go vegan. And the thing is, like, it's not. It does talk about veganism. And basically, like, the single biggest environmental change that an individual can do is to eat a plant-based diet. Now, there's a whole conversation about, like, individual impact versus the fact that, like, 70% of all carbon emissions are committed by, like, the top 5 manufacturing companies. But basically, this book is not about convincing you to go vegan. It's more about, like, examining the psychology of you are presented with a solution and you don't do it. Why? What is this? What is this personal resistance? What is this cultural resistance? And he's kind of like examining, like the weird like human social freeze response in the face of like grand catastrophe, looming catastrophe. So yes, it is about like the impact of a plant-based diet and like the reasons people do and don't choose to do it. But it's not specifically about convincing you. It's more about, let's break down like why here is like a major solution that can be implemented immediately. That's the other thing. It's a change that can be implemented immediately with little to no change to manufacturing or social structure or like your daily life. Like, I mean, if you have access to a grocery store and you know how to cook, like, this is a change you can make right now. What is the hurdle there? Anyway, it was very interesting, and I feel like we talk a lot about like books that are kind of like trying to convince you that climate change is real, because it's sad that is a conversation that still needs to happen. But for the people who are looking for like the next step, that's an interesting one. And that's one that I would like to revisit at some point. What is a non-bookish highlight from your year? You know, a TV show or a podcast or whatever. So one of them is this other YouTube channel that is called Mariah Alice. And it follows a young woman named Mariah Alice. And she lives in a van, you know, like she's doing the van life thing. But I just absolutely fell in love with her sense of storytelling, of her journey, because she does a lot of like self-reflection about, you know, challenging yourself to face your fears or do something that's hard, or like, you know, a lot of it is like her kind of struggling with, you know, making friends on the road, especially during COVID. But it's basically like you're really watching her grow up. You're watching her. I mean, you know, and she's like a very self-aware person, but you know, she also deals with like a lot of anxieties and nervousness, and like, I mean, she's a Pisces, so like, of course my heart is just like, a kindred spirit, I see you. But I just went through a period, like she's one of like the few people I subscribe to where I went through and watched all of her videos. And yes, like I do kind of dabble in watching like some van life stuff, but like I will go through a phase where I'll like watch some van life stuff just because I like the idea of, you know, traveling with your home, and like your home is like always with you, and also having something that's more secure than a tent. You know, if you're in bear country or something. But there is something about like her videos and her narrative specifically that just transcends the specific topic, and she makes it very interesting to watch. You know, the story that she's telling about her life is just so interesting, and well told, and her little dog is adorable. So wanted to shout that out. And then I watched the show Reservation Dogs. It's on Hulu. And it was fun. It was a little bit of a slow start, but by the end of it, I was absolutely left watching more. And it follows mostly 4 teenagers that live on a reservation in, I believe, Oklahoma? Yes. So they are on some indigenous reservation land in rural Oklahoma. So it's a very, very small town where not a lot happens. And they're all kind of trying to hustle to various degrees of legality to save enough money to leave and go to California. And you are dealing with the fact that like one of their friends passed away recently, and the impact that has had on them and their friendship. And then you're also following like their families and like some other characters in this town, and each episode is kind of focused on the development of one specific character. So within it, you know, you'll definitely see other characters, but like if you're like, I want to know more about that character, like there's probably an episode down the line that's really focusing on developing them. Oh, and the show is also like co-produced with Taika Waititi, so it's funny, but it's this weird, what it is the humor. Sometimes they have to deal with like some really dark topics, and the humor is just used brilliantly. It's really used to break the tension. I mean, he really puts the relief in comedic relief, and it's basically like you're getting like too wound up and like too sad and too frustrated, and then something just slightly absurd will happen, and just like, you know, it's not so random and hilarious that it feels irreverent to what is kind of being discussed, but it is enough to just kind of like not drag you down too much. Yes, so I hope, I don't know if there's going to be more seasons, but I really hope that there are, because now that we've kind of like set the groundwork of like who all these characters are, I want to see what happens to them. Question number 7, what is the greatest outlier of the books you read in 2021? I'd have to say Gone with the Wind. First off, because of its length. It's over 1,000 pages long, and I usually read stuff that's between like 300 and 400 pages. I mean, like, and even then, it's like a rare thing to find something like above 700 pages. And then also because it was one of my top books of the year, which if you've never read it and you just kind of know, like, that it's one of those books that's like kind of canceled, but also like it's old enough that, like, you know, that it's not at the forefront of like discussions about canceling books. But if you just kind of know that conversation and you don't actually know, and you've never actually read it, like, that might be confusing. Like, that book made it into like your top 10 nonfiction, your top 10 fiction of the year, really? So there's that, and then also the fact that it's not one of my go-to genres. Like, it's historical fiction, and it's also like epic, not like generational saga, but it's definitely following a family over a long period of time. And I don't completely dislike that genre, but it's a rare thing for something of that description to really stick with me. So, you know, I think I talked about this, that part of why it's like on my top books is because of how much it surprised me. Question number 8. What book are you most excited to revisit? I think I'd have to say the Broken Earth trilogy. I did reread the 5th season and then continued on with the rest of the series. So the first book in that series I have read twice. And I feel like I got just as much out of it reading it the second time as I did the first time. Like, the world building is so rich, and the way things are set up is just, it's so fascinating to go through reading it the first time and then go through reading it now that you have an idea of what has happened, and actually seeing that explanation of what's going on filled out even more now that you know what to look for. Fascinating. Love it. I think, like, of my nonfiction, I'd have to say Care work, because I listened to it really fast on audio on some very long driving trips, so I couldn't really take a lot of notes, or like, that's a book like I need to get a physical copy so I can really go back to. I feel like that is a book that's going to be kind of like, you know, So You Want to Talk About Race, where you're like, no, there's actual like tips and tricks for like how to approach, you know, disability justice, how to approach having these conversations, how to approach, you know, being a person who works for equity and justice. And I feel like, yeah, Care work, I feel like has a lot of ideas that are not reiterated in anti-racist justice teachings, but they all kind of, you know, work towards a similar goal of like justice and liberation for all people. Question number 9. What video are you most proud of? I'd have to say, my first thought was, I can never give just one answer to anything. If you're new here, this always happens. Like, I can't just choose one. Why? There's so many good things to choose from. Why would I want to exclude things? Anyway, so the first video I have to talk about is I did a review of my new e-reader. It's not a Kindle. It's not a Kindle. It's not a Nook. It's not it's not a Kobo. It's this Chinese brand, like, shipped out of Russia. It's called a Books, and the model is the Poke 3. I think the brand is called like Onyx. Onyx Books, Boox, Poke 3. And I did like a casual review of it. There were like two very in-depth reviews that I found from like tech review channels that go into like screen refresh rate and pixels and all of this shit that's like, for what I'm using it for, I don't give a shit. My criteria was, can I read my books from my library on this e-reader? And then everything else is gravy. So anyway, so that video, it gets like between 800 and 1,000 views a month, which is wild considering that my average is like 20 views a month for any of my other videos. Actually not even. It's like 20 views within the first month, and then it's like maybe 1 or 2 views a month after that. So it's wild that like that one has consistently gotten hundreds of views every month since I uploaded it. It's wild. And then, so there's that one with like its surprise success. I think I'm also really proud of my vampire fiction reading vlog, because I don't do a lot of vlogging stuff, but that one I felt like was leaps and bounds more interesting than my previous vlogs. I actually did like other things besides reading. Like I went on this cool hike with my dad, so I got some footage of that. And then like I actually, like I enjoyed all of the books I was reading, and since they were all kind of like around a theme, I felt like my brain was just like, I don't know, more energized to talk about them. I don't know, it was fun. And I'd like to do something like that again, but also like, oh my god, the amount of time that took compared to like a sit down chatty video like this was very different. And question number 10, what was your favorite last line of a book? I don't know, I don't feel like first and last lines really stick out to me, and then I thought of one, and I'm like, well, if it's the first thing I think of, that must be it, and that is the last line from the 5th season, which I can't say what it is because it's such a huge spoiler. I think it's a huge spoiler because I think if you go into this series knowing that that's the last line of the book, it's going to explain so much of what's happening to this world. But I also love it because you get to the end of this book and you're like, where's the story going? And you get to the end, you get to that line and you're like, oh, that's where the story's going. Okay, strap in. I'm here for the ride. So I guess it gets to be my favorite because I remember feeling a lot of things the first time I read it. Granted, does it count because that was a reread and I didn't read it for the first time last year? I don't know. Also because like half the books I read are from my library, so it's not like I can pick up a copy of it and flip through to the last line and see what it is if I didn't write it down when I had it checked out. Anyway, that's my answer. I'm sticking to it. Okay, and then bonus question number 11 is, what is a creator or a video you would like to give a shout out to? So I would love to give a shout out to Prachi S. So she's actually been on YouTube for a couple of years, but it's mostly been like makeup focused content, and she started by documenting her first no by year, and she's currently doing another no by year this year. But she has, she took like a nice long break from YouTube, and she has a video where she talks about that because it wasn't planned, and she came back and she decided that she wants to do more book content. I mean, I think she's only kind of been back making videos a couple of months, but she's like one of the few creators where for a long time I had watched like every video of hers. There's not a lot of creators that have that claim to fame in my brain. So she's only been back like making videos a couple of months. So I'm not sure like over time what percentage of her videos are going to be book focused, but she's already put out like a couple of great videos that kind of focus on books. So if you're somebody who likes books and makeup and like intelligent self-reflective people, or who like watching people who do budgets or no buys or something like that, her rant review of The Love Hypothesis was hilarious. when she gets sassy about something, it weirdly makes my day. Like, it's weird that I'm happy that someone else is frustrated, but I am greatly entertained by the way she expresses her frustration. So if that sounds entertaining to you, check her out. I will have her channel linked in the description box. I will also have other social media places where you can find me. Important announcement. I do have my Storygraph linked. I didn't realize that you had to enable people being able to ask to follow you. So if you've tried to find me on Storygraph before and couldn't, I'm sorry. I think I've fixed that. Okay, that's it. That's the video. All right, I hope you have a good rest of your day. I encourage you to go out into the world and be curious. And if you stuck around this long, good for you. Please enjoy some bloopers. Except that one's not historical romance. Never mind. We're gonna edit that part out. Words. Why can my brain... That's not the word I want. Why can't my words come down and be coherent? Nope.